I'll call the meeting to order. We'll start on the agenda. Administrative. I assume nobody has access to any paperwork, files, folders, or anything, since Jim is not with us this evening. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Let's move on to minutes. Does anybody have any comments about the April 21st minutes?
April 12th.
I'm sorry, April 12th. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. You're rushing us.
Well, I just transposed the numbers, that's all. Okay, would anybody like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for April 12th, 2021 as written.
Do we have a second?
Rob will second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Will?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
And Bob is an aye. Thank you, Will.
You're welcome.
That was a tough one. Under old business, I guess we can't start this yet, can we?
No, but I do want to mention, I had said earlier, before we started that Heather had sent the slides. She wanted to discuss them. You and I didn't know if it's up to you whether we do that, but we're not this, as far as I know, tonight wasn't to discuss any of that. It was just to schedule the workshops where we could discuss them.
Right. Technically, Heather is not on the agenda.
Well, the other thing is you don't have visual.
I do have visual of those slides.
Okay, you have a copy of the slides, but you're not logging in on a computer.
That is right. You know, but I have the slides here.
Right. It's up to you. But that's just my 4 cents.
Well, what would the board do? Table it or like to do? Table it or hear it now or wait for a complete board?
You know, I think Heather mentioned that it's going to be fairly brief to go over what she has. And if you have access, Bob, you can see the slides. I've got them in front of me as well. Maybe we can just let her give us a brief overview. And we're going to have to ask her to come back as we're doing the workshops too, or maybe we present the material for her. But that's just my 2 cents.
Okay, Rob, how do you feel? Rob?
I think he
This
left
is
us.
Rob. I'm in favor of reviewing Heather's slide presentation.
Okay, Will, what do you think?
I could go with the consensus. It's just that, like you said, she's not on the agenda. It's only going to have to be repeated again later on. We're not going to do anything about it or ask any questions really about it tonight because it's not on the agenda.
Right. Okay, well, why don't we let Heather speak for a brief period and we'll go from there. How does that sound?
That sounds fine. We've got, it's 5:05, so we need a motion to
Okay.
regular meeting and open the public hearing.
That is correct. Somebody care to make that motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to pause this meeting and we'll continue with the hearing.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Rob will second.
Okay, all those in favor, Lil,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Jason,
Aye.
and Bob is an aye. Okay, we're going to continue the hearing for 107R Carver Street. Nature of the hearing is to consider the petition of John Plasek, applicant and owner seeking site plan approval under section 6.3 of the Granby zoning bylaws and applicable of section 3 regulations 3.7.5 accessory use regarding a private garage or stables exceeding 1,200 square feet in area for a detached garage for hobby storage at 107R Carver Street. Is Mr. Plasek
No, he's
on
not.
with us this evening?
No, he is not.
Okay. As we had requested Kathy to send a letter to Mr. Plasek, since he apparently is going in a different route and creating a building that is under 1,200 square feet and doesn't fall under the special permit. Mr. Plasek was asked to, I'm looking at the letter here, to withdraw without prejudice. And I guess he is asking, according to an email received by Kathy Leonard, he said, yes, please cancel my planning board hearing. Thanks. As I question this, I go back to the minutes of the last meeting, and Ken, help me out here. We had suggested that he withdraw without prejudice. That way, if he ever wanted to bring this back up within 2 years, he could. However, now if we are just canceling the hearing, he can't do anything for 2 years regarding this particular item. Is that correct?
Yes, I probably would agree with that, if he's not formally, if the board has identified that email is not formally withdrawing the application without prejudice, then if the board determines to deny the permit based on, most previous correspondence, then the application that was submitted as is to both the ZBA and the planning board will need to be altered or amended if it's to come before the board again. So there would be a different application that would need to happen if you wanted to come before the board for relief.
Okay, but how do you and the other members of the board look at his letter where he just simply says, yes, please cancel my planning board hearing, thanks? Do we have to come to a finding, or do we just cancel it?
That's a good question. I'm trying to find the email from Kathy. I think I found it to see what that correspondence was. Um, oh, the email didn't allude to a withdrawal without prejudice. It was specific to allowing him to meet with Conservation Commission for the 26th.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I'm not sure what came of that meeting, if that was to determine how he was going to move forward with this particular application, or or if that needed clarification for the building permit. I don't know the answer to that. Yeah, I guess I could see this two ways too. Just reading this, because it seemed as if the board was allowing him to meet with the Conservation Commission and then possibly come before the planning board.
Ken,
Yes.
from what I understand, the zoning board of appeals has already denied the special permit.
Yeah, no, and that's my understanding too. The reason why I brought up withdrawal for particularly the site plan is that it's cleaner. It doesn't require a denial by the planning board. Obviously, there are Chapter 40A is in place here, and assuming that he is unable to get the building department approval, or if he is able to get the building department approval, then the processes that went before are moot. But yeah, it was a recommendation to the board to not to, because denials just are one of those things too, where I would be cautious if if the planning board chooses to deny, which it can, the findings just need to be, we need to state those if the planning board is looking to close the public hearing and make that decision tonight. Yeah, we just need to, if a denial is what the planning board may be inching towards, we just need to ensure that when we approach the decision writing for that permit, that we are, just succinct. That's all.
okay, well, on April 13th, Kathy sent Mr. Plasek a note of, and I'll quote, "The planning board would like me to ask you if he would like to withdraw your, if would like me to ask you if he would like to withdraw your site plan approval without prejudice. The planning board would like your response in writing so they can close out the public hearing." And apparently this is the answer that we received. Yes, cancel my planning board hearing.
Okay. I guess I'm seeing a different chain. That's why I'm confused. I don't know if I have that chain. This one didn't state the words prejudice, withdraw without prejudice. So that's why I'm confused.
This
But
this goes back to April 13th, Ken, and you
Okay.
were included in the string.
Let me see.
It says site plan review hearing.
April 13th. It was from Kathy.
Yes. No. No. It was from Jim Tronke to Kathy Leonard, and Jim CC'd us. Will, do you have that email in front of you?
I do see it, Bob.
Okay.
I
Okay.
see it now. Yeah, because it was okay. Okay. I mean, if the board is determining that language that Mr. Plasek had written the email is sufficient based on this correspondence, then the board can act to do that. And it would just require a reflection in the minutes. Doesn't require a decision.
Okay, so the fact that he responded just in different verbiage, the board could consider just the withdrawing without prejudice. Is that correct?
Yeah, so accepting that petition, yeah.
Okay. Any of the board members have any thoughts?
Bob, when I saw the response, to be honest with you, that's kind of what I thought. He didn't reword it the way we wanted, exact in writing, but I think he was agreeing to what was sent to him. So, I mean, the way I see it, I think we go that route.
Okay, Lil, how do you feel?
I don't know if I want to say we are withdrawing it without prejudice because he did not respond that way in writing, so we're putting words in his mouth. That's just the legal side thinking. I don't want to get caught between a rock and a hard space, but I think if we could just say withdrew his application and close the public hearing, I think that would be enough. Wouldn't that be enough, Ken?
Yeah, I think that's sufficient, without needing to add the language without prejudice, wouldn't necessitate a stance by the board if he's to submit another application that would, maybe look the same. I think that just generally, that it's probably okay to have that reflect, if the board wanted to accept that email as a withdrawal of the application, you won't have to include that without prejudice if you don't want to. And it's still, if he needed to get relief from this permitting body, would still need to go through another process that probably would also include the ZBA at some point.
But he wouldn't have to wait 2 years.
No, not for the planning board. He'd have to somehow address the ZBAs if they're reviewing a similar application or the same application. That's not under the purview of the planning board.
Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion regarding the public hearing?
I can do it.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to, let me see if I get the wording right here. To, per Mr. Plasek's email dated April 21, 2021, withdraw his application for site plan approval.
I think we have to close the public hearing first, Lil. and then we can vote on that. Is that correct, Ken?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Jason, you want to make a motion to
Yep.
close the?
Yep, so I'll make a motion to close the public hearing and continue our regular planning board meeting.
Okay, do we have a second?
Rob will second that.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor, Lil,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Jason,
Aye.
Bob is an aye. Okay, now we have to have a motion to open the regular meeting.
Oh, no, he put that in there.
Oh, did he? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I apologize. Okay, so the meeting is back. The regular meeting is back in order. Now we have to discuss and vote on what we would like to do with 107R Carver Street. And Lil, would you like to take it from here?
Yes, let me see if I get it right this time. I make a motion per Mr. John Plasik's email dated April 21, 2021 to withdraw his application for a special permit. We don't know, site plan approval for 107R Carver Street.
Do we have a second?
Rob will second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, Will,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Jason,
Aye.
Bob is an aye. Motion passes. Okay, do we want to move on to Heather next?
Yeah, sure.
Or do we want to take care of the other stuff on the
Well,
agenda?
we've got Ken doing his thing, and then we've got the workshops.
Right. Okay, well, let's stick to the agenda then. The PVPC presentation on changes to Chapter 40A, Sections 5 and 9. Ken, I guess the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. All right. Oops. All right. So I'm just going to quickly go through this presentation. This is, as Lil noted, and in the agenda, I'm going to give you a brief presentation of the recently passed housing choice legislation. As Lil noted at the last meeting, PVPC did a brief synopsis of this at its commissioners meeting. And more than likely, as this continues to roll out and as towns continue to pass bylaws and ordinances and approve special permits for some of the housing related the housing things related to housing in their communities, I'm sure we'll hear more, and also hear best practices within this, and for both the board to consider and for the board to be aware of when it comes time to look at housing type bylaws and or special permits. Additionally, I think I misspoke at the last meeting. with regards to the current, the bylaws you were exploring for an amendment to the planning board. Or sorry, not to the planning board, to the town meeting. And, you know, I think, I think that more than likely, one of the amendments could have been an amendment that could have required a simple majority. However, I think when the board is prepared to move forward with these, we will get a response from the folks at Department of Housing and Community Development for their guidance, as well as the town council, as you know, put these on your warrant in the future. But anyway, so the legislation, an overview of it is changes to Chapter 40A. And so Chapter 40A, as you know, are all of your zoning, the Commonwealth Zoning Act. And for, you know, for easiness, or, you know, the threshold of votes promoting housing production goes from 2/3 to a simple majority. So this would be at the both at the town meeting level and at the planning board level if there is a special permit required that the planning board would oversee. The goal, that this is again coming from the governor's office, is to make it easier for local governments to approve housing using these zoning tools. The new law outlines a series of housing best practices that can be enacted by a simple majority vote. So for instance, reduction of residential dimensional requirements, if the board were to take that on, would require a simple majority vote at the town meeting. If the board wanted to explore smart growth or starter home zoning under Chapter 40R, or if the board wanted to explore accessory dwelling units, you know, something like that. Some other changes which I think are also things for the board to think about, and maybe not so much the board, but the town, are these revenue sharing agreements and the bonding provisions for permitting. And I think the jury's still out on the bonding provision, because it's not very clear in reading the legislation whether or not it is applicable to towns without town councils. So the town councils, and meaning elected officials that, you know, that are not the town meeting as your legislative body, and MBTA communities, which is good for Eastern Mass, because we don't have any MBTA communities out this way. So just a couple of examples of zoning amendments that qualify for simple majority vote. As of right housing developments. So if you all of a sudden wanted to explore multifamily and mixed use development in eligible locations, and there's a new definition for eligible locations that I think we'll just be mindful of as we kind of proceed, that you would only require a simple majority vote at town meeting. Anything with regards to accessory dwelling units, there is a specific definition for that. And then open space residential development, any developments requiring a special permit. So for instance, you know, multifamily and mixed use development in eligible locations, if you had a housing component in your mixed use overlay, at least from what I read, that could possibly be something that only required a special permit. But I think it's specific to housing. I don't know how, in the case of the particular zoning map change that the board was exploring with regards to that corridor on East Street, if that would require a simple majority vote, I think it needs to be clarified. Detached accessory dwelling units, if there is the ability for additional density through a special permit process, would only require a simple majority vote by the planning board. Any reduction of parking requirements for residential or mixed-use development, that also could be something that would affect possibly the changes that the board may be exploring in the future with regards to parking in the mixed use overlay, or anything that has a housing component, mixed use type of product. Any zoning that allows for changes to dimensional standards that allow for additional units. That's also, if the board wanted to explore requiring a smaller minimum lot size, that would only require a simple majority at the town meeting level. Amendments for 40R districts, those are the smart growth and starter home districts. Natural resource protection zoning, similar to open space residential development, and if the board were to explore transfer of development rights. So here are some examples. This is taken from the guidance that the state has provided. And I know Lil shared with the board some important documents. Those are the same documents that I've kind of parsed through to understand the situation. I have some questions that hopefully will be answered in the coming months as we continue to understand this new zoning change, because it is very big for the Commonwealth, and may lead to some additional housing production. Maybe not necessarily in Western Mass, but definitely in Eastern Mass. So when I said accessory dwelling units to be approved as of right, if there is a definition of accessory dwelling units that the board wanted to employ for this, there is a state definition, but if the board wanted to, for the second bullet point under allowing for accessory dwelling units to be approved as of right, if the board wanted to, or if the town approved a bylaw that allowed for ADUs as of right, but required a 1,200 square foot maximum, I guess, wouldn't necessarily need a simple majority vote. As I mentioned earlier, reducing the minimum lot area needed per dwelling, such as changing 1 acre zoning, which in your residential zones, you require 40,000 square feet. So if you were to explore additional densities elsewhere, or change some of those regular dimensional requirements, that would only need a simple majority. And that's covered by the second bullet, changing other minimum lot sizes for purposes of housing production. Duplexes. So if you had additional types of housing that you were to want to explore in certain zones. And I think in some communities, this is like senior housing. If there's a senior housing overlay, or to allow for senior housing in the community, normally could be found in more dense type housing types. So duplexes, maybe multifamilies, but that would only require a simple majority if brought to the town meeting. If you went through the regular process of the planning board having a public hearing, and then providing its board report, and then having this at a town meeting, only would require a simple majority vote.
Ken?
Yes.
What I'm looking at is just your title slide. Are you going through the slides?
Oh boy.
And can you send us these after?
Yes,
later?
I will.
Okay.
Can you see me go through this?
I can see you scrolling, but over to the right, the one now that's showing is saying zoning protests.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just gonna, I will share this with the board, but I basically read through, and since you'll see me make this edit right here. But these are, I was talking through the slides as if you were seeing them. So we'll get to the point where we were. I only have 2 more slides left, and then briefly talk about how to engage understanding how this could apply to future zoning bylaws and changes. So where I left off was special permit decisions, and this is probably where the planning board would definitely change some of the maybe your understandings of how planning board public or special permit decisions are handled. As you know, special permit decisions require a 2/3 vote for all special permits. So in your board, you now only need a simple majority. So of the 5 members, instead of 4, you'll need 3 approvals for any housing related decisions that you may have to oversee. So reduction of parking spaces, again, dimensional requirements. If there is something in the bylaw that allows the planning board to review a special permit to reduce parking spaces on a certain site, that's something that the board would oversee. Multifamily development, if there was something in the bylaw that suggested that other types of housing needed a special permit, that would get a simple majority vote by the board. So zoning protests, I'm going to delete this because it's the same one. Zoning protests is new, and this is the one where I thought I'm going to need some clarification, because it's not really the information that's provided by the state on this is not very good. In that this suggests that if there is a written protest if there's a decision made with regards to a special permit or zoning amendment, where those people that are affected by that zoning change, create a written petition, there would be a need to increase that threshold even more. So the people that are writing the protest, if the town were to have to examine this again, oh wait, no, I'm reading that wrong. Under the new law, that's the important part. A protest will only change if the voting threshold is made by owners of 50% of the affected land area or abutting land. And the zoning amendment under protest, and this is where the protest language within the 48 chapter needs to be clarified, would require a 2/3 majority of town meeting. It's not clear in there, but that's what my assumption. It does specifically say city council or town council. So I'm not quite sure if the town meeting is applicable for that, for housing choice or zoning protests. But that is where it's covered. And when I had said that with regards to special permit, there is some new language here, and I'm sharing this screen where it says bonding provision. There is now a requirement that a judge may require a what's the word? A deposit for the plaintiff, if that's the right, yeah. For let me just read that language. Provides that in a court in its discretion may require a plaintiff appealing a decision to approve a special permit, variance, or site plan to post a surety or cash bond in the amount up to $50,000. Secure the payment of costs if the court finds that the harm to the defendant or to the public interest resulting from delays caused by the appeal outweighs the financial burden of the surety or cash bond on the plaintiffs. So a court may require someone that doesn't like a decision for an approval for a special permit, variance, or site plan to put up money while the case is going through court. Obviously, it's still new, and I'm sure we'll be hearing stories in the next couple of years how that plays out for the protest votes for people that are trying to appeal a special permit approval or any of those types of approvals. One of the important things that I think to be mindful of, as I mentioned to the board, is particular to identifying in your zoning bylaw amendments, and we'll just ensure that as we continue to do planning board reports, or the planning board continues to do the reports, that if it requires a different threshold of vote at town meeting, that the reports include that. And I'm sure town council, your town attorneys will probably ask the board to have that reflected in its planning board recommendations. And so, and because it is so new, I'm sure there are questions, and I'm sure, there may be questions that the board has that I may not be able to answer. But I'm sure as we continue to learn more, and I continue to learn more, there will be opportunity for the board and communities in the Pioneer Valley mostly to reach out to PVPC. I know that we're currently exploring, as some of this new knowledge comes from the state, ways to engage with our member communities to provide similar presentations like this, if not some fact sheets that could be helpful to the board. But that is kind of the general gist of the housing choice legislation. I'm going to stop share. I think this is how you do it. Yeah. And then open it up to questions if the board has any.
And I, of course, got a couple of questions.
Sure.
Um,
I'll try to answer them as best as I can.
Say, now all of these laws, these laws are already into effect. So any bylaw changes we make this time have to go by either the 2/3 or simple majority.
That's correct. Simple majority if they're related to housing.
Okay. Now, next question, if somebody comes in, wants to put in the housing development, big development and all that, and we have our own rules as to setbacks and all that sort of thing, does that get overruled by what the state says?
So if you have no, I mean, it would require, and so if there was, it doesn't touch subdivision regulation. So I guess if there were an opportunity to develop homes that were approved by special permit, and I have so many bylaws in my head. Does Granby have a flexible residential development bylaw? I guess I could Google that.
I don't think we do. Bob, do you know?
Like open space.
I don't believe so. That's something I'm not familiar with if we do.
Okay, so I actually, yes, there's something called open space community in the bylaw, which suggests that there is, this is kind of similar to open space residential, where you are trying to cluster housing, and that wouldn't necessarily, you would get a special permit by the planning board in addition to subdivision approval. But the special permit would allow the planning board to to approve dimensional regulations that are not within the underlying zoning. So more than likely for anything in the residential single family units district, if a special permit were to come in under this guise, under this open space communities, it would require a simple majority because it is a special permit. And just quickly looking at this, it seems as if there's also a component here with regards to, well, it's optional. An optional affordable housing bonus, which allows you to even do additional densities in that type of development. But with that said, I think it wouldn't necessarily, the considerations that the board would need to make are specific to the zoning bylaw, but whereas that approval would be normally a 2/3 majority, so 4 of the 5 votes, would now only require 3 of the 5 votes.
Okay, so this whole thing boils down to a simple majority or 2/3.
Correct, for housing related.
Housing related, and so has nothing to do with dimensions or anything like that. Would we go with what we normally have?
Dimensions if they're related to housing production. So I think, and I think we'll learn more, but my close read and my understanding reading some of this seems to be that if the board were to look at certain dimensional regulations with regards to their residential districts, that if the board or if the town through the planning board and in its planning board report were to promote or propose dimensional regulations that that have smaller setbacks or require a smaller maximum or minimum lot size, then that by the town meeting would require a simple majority.
And basically, the only reason that they're making these changes, or one of the reasons, is it's mostly for the Boston area so they can get more housing in there.
Well, I mean, I think, that might be the perception. I know that here it's, obviously there's an understanding of natural resources and protecting as much as possible. I think that, and protecting, the land as much as possible. But the reason for the housing choice, I think, stemmed from, the housing supply in Boston or in the areas on the eastern side of the state. But because this is specific to, all the rules or all the, the zoning act, it obviously affects everywhere in the state. But I think we navigate, or the board navigates those as they come. It's not necessarily suggesting that you propose these zoning bylaws to create the ability to develop more housing in Granby, but if there were a petition to come from the community, and the planning board had its public hearing, and you went through that process, those types of proposals would possibly would instead get a simple majority at the town meeting, or would only need a simple majority rather than a 2/3 for the voting for the purposes of approving that amendment.
Okay.
Sure.
So this sounds to me like some laws that were written with not much background, a lot of clarification needs to be done, and they're floating a trial balloon in front of everybody, and going to modify and amend as time goes on. Is that a
Well,
fair synopsis?
I think that's the hope. Obviously, you know, they have released these initial draft regulations, and that's kind of what we're all working off of. And I believe the document that Lil shared are those draft regulations. I think it's probably easier to say that if there is some weird result as of, you know, as approvals for housing start occurring that is not the intended result, then they may explore amending. But again, it's a state law, so you know, the planning board just operates within that state 40A, chapter 40A, like it does for everything else. I think we'll just be the planning board will be more cautious, especially if it's exploring bylaw amendments, the town too. And you know, maybe this makes it easier for petition amendments that come to the board. That's possible too, for housing purposes. But because that's now in 40A, there is a requirement that the board and the town will need to you know, just maneuver through the process with the understanding that it probably will require a simple majority rather than a 2/3 majority for housing related bylaws.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? No? Okay. Is that it, Ken,
Yeah,
for your
that's it.
presentation?
Yeah, for the formal presentation, you know, obviously as your planning board consultant, as things come up, I'll be sure to share. I'm going to share this PowerPoint. Lil has done a good job of already sharing what resources she had, and that's kind of what we're all working off of at the moment. So as I continue to attend planner type events to learn more about housing choice, especially in communities across the Commonwealth, I will share that knowledge, you know, especially if the board is looking at housing related bylaw amendments, and you know, if there are opportunities for permits to be approved with the simple majority, which I don't think that there is at the moment by the planning board.
Not at the moment anyway.
Right.
Okay. Any questions, board members? Okay, how about if we move on to scheduling the workshops, and I have a thought for that I want to throw out to the board. Number one, I would like to do this when there's a full board, so everybody can talk about their schedule. And another thing I want to throw out is that I'm wondering if the planning board would be wise to wait to schedule the workshops after the town annual election, when we will definitely have a new sitting member on the board, and that person can be part of the whole process. What are your thoughts?
I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the idea. I think that's probably the best way to go about it.
Okay, so Lil, why don't we table this until we get a new member, or the new member comes aboard, and we can discuss from there. Sound
Okay.
reasonable?
Yes, that's
Okay.
And I'm just checking the only dates we have to, that'll be on the 24th because the town elections are the 17th of May.
Okay. Okay, well, if we can put that on the agenda for the 24th, and we can get started. Or we can schedule workshops, I should say.
Okay.
Okay, are we ready to move on to Heather Labonte?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Okay, Heather, you have the
Hi.
floor.
Thank you for hearing me today. Can you all hear me okay?
I can.
Okay,
I
Yes.
can, Heather.
wonderful. I have to say I'm a little sad that you're not going to hear anymore because Jim gave me the impression that I had one more opportunity to make it to the May meeting, but that probably makes what I'm going to share with you all that much more important. I won't read verbatim what I've written in the presentation because obviously you can all see what I did some research on agritourism, and there's an awful lot of information, and Jim had asked me to come up with rationale as to why this was important to Granby. And I gave it a lot of thought. And the one way that I can continue to attempt to make some money and to continue on my journey is to open myself up as a farm. And as I look back, I have actually been fortunate that my family has been sugaring for many, many years. And until I really started thinking about myself as a farm, I hadn't really thought about myself as a farm first. I was thinking more as a business owner first. And this might give me a little bit better standing in moving forward. So I did, I'll just give you a brief overview. My family's been sugaring since the early 80s. We've been modifying our sugaring process over the years. And we have been selling, and I never really thought about it until this year. So this year I went full bore and I made enough to actually be considered a farm in the state of Massachusetts. So as the Harris Mountain Sugar Shack, I'm now a member of Mass Maple. I have registered myself with the state with produce being maple syrup first, which is kind of a gray area for the state of Massachusetts, but also with blueberries. And so I have a number of blueberry bushes. My husband and I added more last year. We're going to add more this year. So I'm trying to start small, but with Granby being a right to farm community, I'm hoping to put up a small farm stand. And I don't know if that is something that I have to clear with the planning board, but it doesn't appear to be so because we can farm in the town of Granby and the state of Massachusetts. I'm not looking to be huge. I'm just looking to be able to make some money and not give this up. So as far as our sugaring goes, we're a small operation. We don't do any pressing of the sap, anything like that. We are a standard evaporator system, a small operation, but we maintain all of the maple industry protocols from pulling from the taps to bottling. We've been increasing yearly our sugaring operation, and we're small. Like we are small, but we are legit. So I'm pretty excited about. We've had the best year that we ever had this year. As far as the blueberries, that is something new. We have very acidic soil where we are. So in the last couple of years, I've been kind of refining our blueberry process. We have excellent, like I said, excellent soil for it. So that would be the secondary means in which that I make money to be able to support the requirements of being a farm. So my whole goal with this was, as I've met the financial criteria, I've now registered myself as a farm. I'm requesting that the private event proposal that I made, perhaps it would help if it were specific to farm qualifications. And then that might ease up the anxiety that the town has, and perhaps the board as well, in having the opportunity for me to be able to move on with my business plan. I said it was brief. It's pretty brief.
As far as the word anxiety, I don't know that anybody on the board has anxiety
Maybe it's the
regarding
town.
your. Well, this is all something new that's being presented. Have you searched within the farm? I know farming is broad, and farms are given a great deal of latitude with a lot of things. And is there anything that within the farming industry that, or within however Massachusetts constitutes it, that could allow you to do something like this?
Well, that's a really interesting question. And I've done a ton of research. I have exhausted the state website and trying to understand exactly what is possible with a farm. Now, in doing research of surrounding farms and farms that also offer private events, it doesn't, I had only limited success in finding what they're like trying to understand what each town's bylaws were. But every farm, the majority of the farms who are even small farms, I even found a maple farm that does weddings. That is one component that they offer, and that is also an added component to agrotourism. Um, so it appears, yes, that I should be able to continue with my plan as a farm, but I can't find anything that specifically states, yes, you can do this. And that's why I wanted to bring it to you, because I feel like I've checked all the boxes. I've now checked them for farming, and I've actually met the financial criteria for a farm. I have the land for farming. I actually am going to go to the town and, well, to the assessors and kind of work with my 61B. Maybe a portion of that can be 61A. I've done some research there as well. But there's no clear location for me to find this specific answer. That's kind of a long-winded way of saying I certainly hope so. And I've done a lot of I've done a lot of looking, and I don't even know where else to turn, frankly. I've been kind of I mean, I've been meeting with you guys since December 2019. I'm sure that you're super excited to see my name every week, every time I come to a meeting. But I really want to be able to utilize the property that my parents had, where it's just a very special place, and I would invite all of you to come and visit as well anytime.
Thank you. You said that there is a farm, a maple sugaring farm that does this.
I found it was an old presentation that I had found, and they were one farm that had been interviewed, and they were in, I want to say it was Central Mass. It was a name that was not incredibly familiar with to me, so I can't tell you if they are still currently doing that. It was one component of many things that they do. I found an apple farm that also does does similar things. I've found also in the big picture, the grand picture of agrotourism, there were wineries, there were corn mazes, there are hay rides. I'm not looking to be any of that. I want to be very specific. I want private events that are high end. I want them to be weddings. I want them to be corporate events. I'm only seasonal. And now I want to actually really utilize, and my husband and I have been really talking about how to really refine our sugaring and make that a little bit bigger and more robust, and maybe incorporate that into truly educating people on sugaring, because it's kind of I won't say it's a lost art. The way we do it is kind of a lost art, but it appears that this is an area where I should be able to operate because I am a farm, meaning the private events. And I turn to you. I don't know who else to turn to, honestly.
Ken, knowing what we know now, that Heather is registered, I believe it was April 23rd. Has registered her Harris Mountain Estate and Farm. Is there any direction that she can pursue that you're aware of?
I think the short answer is I'm unsure, because the agricultural exemption in 40A is very broad. And I think understanding Heather's appearance before the board and in this meeting as well as previous meetings, and knowing now that she has the agricultural, the ability to demonstrate that she is exempt from certain aspects of zoning. With regards to private events, I am more familiar with communities that have required some sort of permitting, even because of impacts to the neighborhood. I think the guise of setting up a zoning bylaw amendment, as we were trying to do and proposing initially, was to address that, because there will be impacts to traffic, to these other ideas of utilizing that space for private events. I think the bylaw that we were working on to an extent addressed that. I know that there were some examples with that I provided from the town I was previously a town planner for, where the approval was for agritourism. So the ideas that she brought up earlier with regards to corn mazes and some of those seasonal events would have required a site plan approval by the planning board, because there is going to be an increase of traffic to the town's roads. And I think it's always good for the purposes of the town to understand those impacts and just be aware that, maybe Heather's Farm would have something like that. I'm not sure with regards to private events. The bylaw that I had shared with the board from the town I used to be the town planner for required a special permit for private events on those properties. I think it'll be different across the board depending on where we look. I think as you suggested, Bob, if Heather has some examples that she can share with the board, I think that when we start working on, possibly working on these bylaws again, it'll be good to have to look at and consider if the board wants to amend, the bylaw that we had initially proposed. But the short answer is no. With regards to private events, I haven't heard an agricultural exemption, requiring that there's no sort of permitting process for that by a land use board.
Okay.
Someone has to be aware. So, I mean, even so, I think there are other licensing issues. I think as we've discovered and we talked about in the past, specific with alcohol and liquor, that, absent a property doing private events, but requiring liquor or serving liquor, the town would know about it. But I think the permitting process by the planning board or whatever other land use board would allow for, just kind of a reliance on the best information by the operator. So in this case, Heather's, if she were to, go for a permit, to understand the nuance of her business.
Just to jump in on the liquor, component, I've done some research on that, and my plan all along has been to hire an outside third-party company that comes in, and they have their own liability insurance and their own liquor license, and it stands for a day. There's a company out of South Hadley that does it. There are a few others in the area. So that is one piece that I want that liability to not be on me. I also know it's a component that every wedding wants. So I've done some research there, and carry their own liability insurance as well as their own liquor license, I also will be carrying liability insurance, just to give you a little bit more depth there.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. I think the liquor, obviously, that type of licensing would, even if you were to go through a third party, would need to come before the local licensing board, liquor license board, so the select board, and they would know based on that day permit where alcohol was being served. So it would draw attention to your property anyway. But I think, as we've been saying all along, and I think the planning board has continued working on this particular bylaw, it's understanding what role the planning board may have with regards to at least understanding its impacts to your neighbors and to town roads and town services. And that's why special permits are usually granted for that.
And I really would love everyone to come up and even to drive by. I have very few neighbors, and all of the neighbors that I do have are absolutely on board with this. We've been, we're kind of an odd little family up there, and we, I would welcome you to come and check it out, just so that you understand just how private it truly is.
Okay, do any of the board members have any other thoughts or input?
I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
good.
Jason? Okay,
Yeah, this is
Rob?
Rob. Yeah, no, I really like, Heather's plan. I know she's been working with us for over a year now, and I'd really like to see this go through for her. I think it'd be great for Granby. It would be a great thing for Granby to have this in town.
okay. Well, Heather, I thank you for your presentation, and when we start this back up again, I guess in May, we'll see what we can do, to work with you, and as well as work with our constituents here in the town.
I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you hearing me tonight. I will absolutely be there for future meetings, and I absolutely am willing to work with whomever I need to keep this moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have anything else? I'm directing that question actually to Will.
No, that's it. We just need a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Hey, Bob, real quick. On the planning board, we don't deal with rumors at all, but there's been a lot of talk about proposed marijuana facility off of New Ludlow Road, up by South Street. Like I said, I know we don't deal with rumors, but there's been a lot of talk in town about some proposed facility. And from what I remember, there's no plans coming before the planning board about a proposed marijuana growing facility off of New Ludlow Road and South Street.
that is correct. As far as I know, we haven't received anything.
Right. Okay. So, like I said, we don't deal with rumors, but there's been some talk on the town meeting Facebook page about some proposed marijuana facilities in that area, and I guess it would just be good to shut that conversation down, those rumors down. There's nothing before the planning board as far as we know at this time.
Not that I know of. Will, Ken, Jason, have you heard any of this, or have we seen anything definitive come before the board?
This is Lil. I've seen the talk on Facebook. I think it's just a rumor somebody started, and it went into, here's what our bylaws say. It can only be in this sort of place. Well, I heard somebody was going to. Nothing has come before the board yet, so it doesn't exist.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
very
think
good.
that's the perfect way to put it.
Yes.
Nothing's come before the board. At this point in time, it doesn't exist. Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome.
Okay, does anybody have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Will?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Bob is an aye. Thank you all, and Ken, thank you for everything you do with us.
Thank you.
Thank you
guys
guys.
Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.